What does the roadmap look like for a win in Week 5? We're getting into all the final details here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. Here on the Locked On Network, today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda. Move and be moved. Injury report is out early, mercifully, instead of waiting till 4 o'clock. There's some teams across the league, they make you wait for it. They really make you sweat. And it's funny right now with Baltimore sitting at 1-3, and Lamar Jackson's been reported to be out, but John Harbaugh's refusing to dish on it. He was asked in their post-practice coach availability. It's interesting how different teams do stuff, right? Mike speaks first thing in the morning, and then they go to practice. Ravens have practice, and then John Harbaugh speaks, and then the rest of the players and coaches speak that are made available. And Harbaugh just refuses to make any concessions. He says, well, there's an injury report at 4 o'clock. You guys can check it. But the Dolphins have their injury report, and it's before 4 o'clock. So we're going to get into the 6 total players on both sides that have been ruled out of this contest, including some meaningful players on both sides of the ball for Carolina. This is what I think the second consecutive week the Dolphins have had a shorter injury report than the team that they are facing, which is an impressive feat for the Mike McDaniel era, perhaps the dividends of the efforts to create a more durable roster. The irony there, of course, is the Dolphins are reeling on the loss of Tyreek Hill out for the season. But McDaniel did say Tyreek stopped by today's team meeting, which is great to hear that he's up and moving around and on his way to recovery. We want to focus on Week 5 against the Panthers, and want to start with the 2 players that are out for Miami, both of which I believe are inconsequential. Storm Duck and Cedric Wilson. If Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas stay healthy the rest of the season, I don't think Storm Duck, even when he's ready to come back, and he was a non-participant all 3 days in practice, I don't think he's going to be positioned to see the field. Now, the Dolphins do have Ethan Bonner, who is a full participant in Friday's practice. So that gives you a little bit of extra insurance when you went through the Jets game and you had, I think it was 4 corners dressed for the game. You were pretty lean there. So Miami gets Ethan Bonner back. So that's something in their back pocket for a little extra insurance as a guy who keeps getting compliments, keeps getting some praise, but has yet to put it all together. Cedric Wilson's the other player who has been ruled out proactively for the Dolphins. That is not a surprise. He had a procedure, and the Dolphins had made the move, and I don't think it's a big deal, even though some would say, oh, well, you just signed Cedric Wilson, and he's a non-participant, and he's not going to play in the first game. You got Taj Washington in the hopper. Darren Waller limited all 3 days in practice, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, with hip/rest. There was no setbacks in that regard. He's going to be good to go this week. We mentioned Ethan Bonner. Jordan Brooks with an elbow, full participant in all 3 days. Jonas Savaitanaya, full participant all 3 days with a knee on the injury report. These guys are all good to go with no designation. And then Alec Ingold had a vet rest day on Thursday. Also good to go. That's it for the names on the Dolphins injury report. It's only 7 names. Panthers have more than 7. They have 4 that are out, and then they have another 3 that are questionable to then go with another 5 guys that are all meaningful guys that had varying degrees of injuries that had them on the list. Chuba Hubbard, the running back, it was confirmed this morning is out for this game. So Chuba Hubbard's been ruled out with a calf. Dave Canales, the Panthers head coach, said that he left the game in week 4. It was a pre-existing injury. It was worse. It got aggravated and got made worse in the game in week 4. Jatavian Sanders with an ankle has been ruled out. Their starting nickel corner, Charles Smith-Wade, with a chest injury has been ruled out. And then Tershawn Wharton, who was a big free agent signing from Kansas City as a pass rush guy on the interior, he's also out. That's a significant loss for Carolina up front, because I do think, and we said this on the crossover, Carolina, in my opinion, their best matchup to lean on from a personnel standpoint is the defensive interior. Now, they still have Derek Brown, former first-round pick from 2020. He's a stud. Still have A'Shawn Robinson, who's still an effective NFL player. You still have Bobby Brown, who I loved and would have loved to have seen the Dolphins sign in free agency this past offseason, but he got a handsome contract with a lot of incentives. But the depth here suddenly looks a little different without Turk Wharton as the fourth guy. Now it's Cam Jackson, who's questionable for this game, is the fourth defensive tackle. And he's questionable with a knee injury. So is LeBron Ray, who's kind of an odd front defensive end type. Pass rushers, DJ Wanham and Patrick Jones. Wanham's listed as questionable. He was limited the first 2 days of practice this week with a hip injury. Then you have Xavier Legette returning from a hamstring injury. Former first-round pick wide receiver. Their this year first-round pick wide receiver, Tetairoa McMillan, was a full participant with a calf. Taylor Moton was a non-participant with vet rest on Wednesday. There you have it. And, of course, Carolina also has several prominent players on injured reserve like Jalen Coker, Austin Corbett, Robert Hunt, Chandler Zavala, David Moore. Those guys are all on the offensive side of the football, interior offensive linemen and wide receivers. So this is a Panthers team that's banged up, and the Dolphins, obviously, they have their own share of injuries, the Kader Kohus of the world, the Tyreek Hills of the world, Jason Marshall, James Daniels, Austin Jackson, Jason Sanders. Miami's got a pretty impressive list of their own. But as far as guys that are on the 53 right now, Miami is, I don't think there's any question, in a better position to play this game on Sunday than Carolina is. So how does it play out? What are the matchups to watch? What do you need to know about Carolina from a statistics and metrics standpoint? We're going to get into all that next here on Locked On Dolphins. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball when the Dolphins have the football. That's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. So take this ad as an excuse to go out and support your favorite local spot. Have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go to your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's redefining the game. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward for Miami in week 4 against the Jets, the Devon Achane touchdown in the low red zone. Tyreek Hill goes down. You have some questions offensively about how you're going to pick that up. And, Devon Achane, another opportunity in the low red zone to finish a run like he did against the Colts, like he did against the Patriots at the close of the first half, and like he did for the touchdown that he had against the Jets, to make people miss, to embrace contact, finish with physicality, and get in the end zone with an exclamation point. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. So the Carolina Panthers, their metrics defensively. Let's start with last year when they went 5-12. They allowed 31.5 points per game across 17 games, 534 points total allowed in 2024. That was a franchise record by 64 points. So 470 in 2019 was the next most recent amount of points allowed. The third worst mark in Panthers franchise history is 429. So it's 105 points more than the third worst mark in franchise history. So what do you do with a year like that, right? Well, the Panthers, they came out and they spent like gangbusters, and they signed a bunch of names in free agency that were intended to raise the floor, like a Patrick Jones, like a Turk Wharton. Those guys are both question, or Wharton's out. Patrick Jones is questionable. Bobby Brown, defensive line to add some more teeth up front. They end up signing Trayvon Moehrig, who was one of my favorite free agents available from the Raiders, as a potential upgrade to bring in and move the needle in the secondary. They pair that with the draft that saw them draft 4 guys on defense, and Nick Scorton with a top 50 pick, and then Princely Umanmielen with a top 100 pick. Those are 2 pass rushers. Lathan Ransom, a safety who I also liked, kind of for some of the same reasons I really like Trayvon Moehrig. They drafted him in the 4th round. And then Cam Jackson, who is questionable for this game, was drafted in the 5th round as a big body nose tackle type. So they spent like gangbusters on defense. The product that it's given them thus far, they currently rank 19th in the league in scoring defense, 23.8 points per game, but that is bolstered by a shutout of the Falcons, in which the Falcons turned the ball over 3 times. And the Falcons outgained the Panthers in that game by 110 yards, 332 to 224. But they win 30-0, and you compare that to 26 points allowed against Jacksonville, 27 points allowed against Arizona, and Arizona's been a dumpster fire the last 2 weeks offensively, and not just because guys have started getting injured. And then a 42 spot to the Patriots in New England. Carolina's at home, should help. But you look metrics-wise across the board, they are a team that ranks 23rd in net yards per attempt, passing the football. They give up an average of 4.9 yards per rush. That ranks 27th in the NFL. Defensively on third downs, they're middle of the road across the board. They're 15th in third and fourth down conversion rate. They're 19th in the NFL in red zone conversion rate, with a 61.5% in the end zone finish of possessions in the red zone. They have 2 sacks this season, one by Turk Wharton, who is out for this game, and the other one is by rookie Princely Umanmielen, who was their 3rd-round draft choice. They don't have a single player with more than 1 tackle for loss as far as disruption. And to put that into context, for all of the concerns that exist about Miami and their ability to play with disruption up front, they have Tyrell Dotson has 4 tackles for loss. Bradley Chubb has 3 tackles for loss. Jordan Brooks and Zach Sealer both have 2 tackles for loss. The Dolphins have 8 sacks versus just the 2 for Carolina. Now, they have had some success getting their hands on football with J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, Chow Smith-Wade, and DJ Wanham all having 1 interception. Wanham's questionable. Chow Smith-Wade is out. Smith-Wade returned his interception for a touchdown. We talked on the squad show last night with Grease and Jeff Scanina. We talked about the linebacker rooms. And for me, this is the matchup for Miami where you want to get under center, you want to run wide zone, you want to do play action and boot game off of that. You want to run the crossers that you had a lot of success getting to against the New York Jets. You're looking at a new nickel. You're looking at Trevin Wallace, Christian Roseboom, an undrafted rookie, and Bam Scott is the 3rd off-ball linebacker, and then Claudine Cherillius, who they got off waivers from the Jets. Those are the top 4 linebackers for the New York Jets, or for the Carolina Panthers. That is a problematic group. And then you pair that with asking yourself, what's the strength of the guys that you have? Well, you have two rookies on the edge in Uma Miailan and Nick Scorton, who are young guys. And the only other guys that you have running with them are Patrick Jones, who's questionable, and DJ Wanham, who's questionable. Patrick Jones, more of a straight line player. I kind of comp him to like before Emmanuel Agba had the triceps injury in Miami when he was getting like 7 sacks a season and he earned that pretty handsome contract extension. Like that's the kind of player I see with Patrick Jones. But he's a lean body build. He's not as dense as Emmanuel was. But he's that kind of same, like he doesn't have a lot of bend. He's more of a linear with some heavy hands type of player. Wanham's a good player. But he's buoyed by, in the same way that the Dolphins' defensive tackle room is Zach Sealer, who's a good player. And I think Sealer's a better defensive tackle than DJ Wanham is. But it's a bunch of rookies, regardless of how highly they are drafted or not. Miami should have a lot of opportunity to make hay in this regard, especially when you consider how Tyreek or how Julian Hill, I think, has made some leaps as far as being a consistent player as a blocker at the point of attack. I have high expectations. And then you look at what they have on the practice squad. If they were going to even elevate somebody up, they have Boogie Basham, who was a former top 100 pick for the Bills, who has not worked out. They've got Chris Barnes at linebacker. They just don't have a lot of depth. So for me, it's running on the edges, misdirection for the linebackers. And if they're going to roll that extra safety down to take away the second level with those intermediate throws, those crossers and those inbreakers, then they are inviting single coverage with a single high safety player. If they're going to play cover 3, I think you're going to have the opportunity to, against zone, to have Waddle route up and find soft spaces in zone. If they're going to play cover 1 with a single high post player, you're going to have an opportunity to take some shots down the field. And I actually think the chemistry with Tua from a timing perspective on those routes has been better than what it's been with Tyreek. I'm not saying they're more talented without Tyreek. Of course they're not. But this is a Carolina team that I think their strengths, unless the Dolphins say, hey, we're going to come out and we're going to do 3 yards in a cloud of dust, which Mike McDaniel's never done. I think where they are weak and where they are strong, there's matchups to feel good about. Miami coming out of this game scoring in the 26, 27, maybe not 42, but certainly not 0. I'd be stunned if they scored 0 points in this game. I'm thinking between 27 and 30 points is kind of what I'm thinking for Miami in this game. So now the question on the other side of that coin is, can the Panthers score that amount of points as well? We're going to get into the matchups there on the other side of the break. Make sure you guys stick with us.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, so let's talk about the Carolina Panthers and their offense, which brings in Bryce Young in year 3 and kind of a prove-it opportunity with a coach that was brought in to try to fix Bryce Young. And the results, frankly, have not been good. And some of this is you're handcuffed by Your wide receiver situation, where Xavier Legette has not been a productive player. We talked about that on the crossover with Julian Council yesterday. But you do have Tetero McMillan as a volume player. But here's where the Dolphins are coming off of a matchup against the Jets, where you looked at the matchups and said, okay, you have Garrett Wilson, who's a top, for my money, top 12 at worst wide receiver in football, very talented player, one of the best route runners in the game. Who do you have around that? Well, you don't really have a lot. You don't have a lot of concern. So you have to choose to bracket Garrett however you want, and then the stress and pressure trickles down to covering Isaiah Davis, the running back, and Mason Taylor, the rookie tight end. And Mason Taylor got going in the game a little bit. I look at what Carolina has. Let's acknowledge Tetero McMillan as a top 10 draft choice, and he's getting targeted like it, right? I mean, he's getting a lot of volume in the passing game. He has 18 targets. The only other wide receiver with more than 8 on the season is Hunter Renfrow, who has 13 and is averaging 5.8 yards per catch. His success percentage on targets is 38%. Very low yield as far as success rate on targets to Hunter Renfrow. So you acknowledge the volume's not there. Well, they're getting Xavier Legette back. Okay, so Legette's going to be back this week. Height, weight, speed guy, can run down the field. Has struggled with routes, has struggled with separation, has struggled with drops. Hunter Renfrow, Bryson Tremaine, and Jimmy Horn are the other active roster wide receivers for Carolina. Look at tight end. Jatavian Sanders is out. It's Tommy Tremble, who's an inline player, a 5th-round rookie, and Mitchell Evans. Look at running back. Chuba Hubbard is out. It's Rico Dowdle, who was a productive player last year for Dallas, running behind a really good offensive line, and then a 4th-round rookie in Trevor Etienne. The starting center's out, the starting right guard's out, the backup right guard's out. Ike Mekwonu has not played consistently well all year after he missed week 1 with some kind of emergency procedure, and he's fine. He's back. And then Bryce Young, who the Carolina Panthers passing game thus far this season, on attempts that travel further than 5 yards downfield, has 1 touchdown, 1 interception, a passer rating of 72, and is completing 52% of his passes on passes that go beyond 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. You could say whatever you want about Tua Tagovailoa in this regard. The Dolphins are completing 58%. They've got a passer rating that's 12 points higher. They've got 4 times as many touchdowns. Now they've got 3 picks. That needs to get cleaned up, of course. And it's not like, Carolina's dropped back 14 more times and attempted 14 more of those throws through 4 games. It's just been non-existent. And maybe Xavier Legette coming back frees that element of their offense up. I'd be surprised. And it would be a part of the game that you're probably willing to live and die with if you're the Dolphins. Now, I do think Anthony Weaver talked on Thursday about some of the changes that they're making around Zach Sealer, who had 2 tackles for loss and had 2 pressures against the Jets. Full disclosure, be totally fair, right? I want to be mad when it's time to be mad, but I want to be mad at the right things. The front did not play well against the Jets. That can be true, and Zach Sealer can also individually have had his best performance of the season. Those 2 things can coexist together. Because I thought Kenneth Grant played the worst game of his young career in week 4 against the Jets. But here's what Anthony Weaver had to say about Zach and his role and how he plays and processes as a player and what the Dolphins are doing differently with him moving forward that hopefully frees up some of those blocks, if you will. Zach, he's such an incredibly smart football player in that he can take in all the information in real time. Stances, communication, backfield sets, talk about the offensive side of the ball. So some of those things he can take advantage of. Now, like we talked about earlier in the season when he was trying to help so many people, we weren't giving him the opportunity to do that. I think now, with, again, some of the maturation of some of the younger guys around him, maybe not playing both rookies with him at the same time and trying to take some of that off of him pre-snap with getting guys lined up and helped, that's going to allow him to be him and take some of the stress we had on him earlier in the season. Thank you, Anthony. And I got real fired up last week about talking about, Anthony, we were talking about, all of our problems can be solved by violence, and then the Dolphins go out, they give up 200 rushing yards in the game, and it kind of fell a little flat, right? Especially some of the young guys where you think there's an opportunity here for the light bulb to kind of go on, and we didn't feel like the light bulb went on. So I get that. But this at least makes sense. It's at least a why behind why Zach Sealer has not looked like Zach Sealer for much of the first 4 weeks of the season. And at least there's some kind of pathway for you to say, hey, we feel like we're going to be in a position to help Zach play more like Zach Sealer. Carolina, from a metrics perspective, offensively this season, they ranked 27th in the NFL in net yards per attempt. So they're 27th offensively and 23rd defensively in net yards per attempt, which is yards per attempt and then factors in like yardage lost and gain on sacks and whatnot. They are 23rd in the NFL in yards per rush, 3.9 yards per attempt. So they are 23rd offensively in yards per attempt, and they're 27th defensively in yards per attempt. I think this is the most eye-opening stat. And Carolina Panthers average possession, they are 9th in percentage of drives that end in turnovers. So they do a pretty good job protecting the ball. They're middle of the pack for average starting field position. They average the second longest amount of time of possession per drive on average of any team in the NFL through the first 4 weeks. And they average the third most amount of plays. So they're possessing the ball for longer than everybody except for one team, and they're running more plays per drive than everybody except for two teams. Yet they rank 21st, in yards per drive. So they're running all these plays and they're not going anywhere. They're 24th in points per drive offensively. They're 27th in percentage of drives that end in scores, 1 out of every 3. You compound all that with a offense that's 20th in third down defense. They're 21st in fourth down offense. The 38% of third downs offensively they're converting. 6 of 11 on fourth down. That's percentage is 21st in the NFL. That's pretty good. Now they are 6th in the NFL in red zone percentage of possessions in the red zone that go into the end zone for touchdowns, but they've only been in the red zone through the first 4 games 10 times. I want to put that into context. I mean, just compare it to Miami. Miami, with that horrible first week that they had and 2 games that they've played in which they had less than 300 yards of total offense, the Dolphins have been in the red zone thus far this season 10 times as well. The Dolphins have a better red zone percentage. I think about some of these high-scoring offenses. Buffalo. How many times has Buffalo been in the red zone the first month of the season? 18 trips. And think about the Philadelphia Eagles. How many trips has Philadelphia had into the red zone the first 4 weeks of the season? 11 trips, but they've gone 11 of 11 for touchdowns. So there's your sign on the Philadelphia Eagles. So they're not really getting the opportunities. And that goes back to we're possessing the ball, we're running plays, but we're not getting the yards per play to put ourselves in possession to score points. I think from a matchup basis, I'm probably going to shade a safety towards Tetairoa McMillan. You could probably get away with playing either Jack or Rasul on him. I think if you wanted to play zone and you wanted to play the matchups game, you probably would be behooved to put Rasul over top of him because McMillan is he's a smooth, big-bodied player. And if you wanted to play man, especially off man, and not press at the line of scrimmage, play from depth a little bit more. I think, Jack is probably the guy that you would feel good about staying sticky and running. It's just, is he going to get bodied at the catch point or not? But for Bryce Young, it's really about, getting pressure in his face. And I think the Dolphins have done a pretty good job of this the last couple weeks against Fields, against Drake May, and against Josh Allen. And those are all guys that are much more prolific from a size and speed dynamic than what Bryce Young is. And Bryce is a shorter player. So if you can get the same kind of interior of the pocket collapse on Bryce Young, I think that is going to be an elemental piece of a formula to win the football game. Would not hurt if you force this team to make some mistakes, right? And continue that. Scanina kept saying it yesterday. Turnovers, when they come in bunches. Turnovers, when they come in bunches. They have turned the ball over 6 times. They did not turn the ball over against New England. And the turnovers per week have gone 3, 2, 1, 0. So they have gotten better from a ball security standpoint in each of the first 4 games. But 197 passing yards against New England, 114 passing yards against the Falcons, 142 passing yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1. Now, they had 303 against the Cardinals, but that was like a blowout game that got interesting late. The Cardinals were up with 20 minutes left in that game, 17 minutes left in that game, 27-3. They were smoking them. So if you take like the garbage time elements of that out, Carolina didn't really move the ball, passing the ball in that regard. And you go back to last year, at the end of the year last year for Bryce Young. Passing yards, 270 against Atlanta in overtime, 165, 149, 175, 184, 289, 249 after the bye, 118, 166, 85. This has not been a very productive unit, and it's carried over into year 2 with Dave Canales and Bryce Young. I expect the Dolphins to win this football game, and I expect them to win this football game by more than 1 score. And the Dolphins have their own set of issues. But I look at the matchups on both sides of the ball. I think Miami, say what you will about Mike McDaniel and Anthony Weaver right now, I think they're a better coach team than Carolina is. I think they're a more talented team than Carolina is. They're a healthier team than Carolina is. Carolina's just playing at home. And those fans are fed up. They got podcasters quitting doing their podcast because they're tired of Dave Tepper's program. I got high expectations this week, and I'll be very disappointed if the Dolphins don't live to those expectations. I'm not saying you got to sit here and beat the Panthers 42-0 or 42-9, whatever it was that the Patriots did. 42-13. But I have high expectations regardless of what Miami's hardships are. When you look at it and I think you apply logic, I think the Dolphins come out with a win in week 5. We'll see what they do. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you all again after the game on Sunday with the post-game Dolphins squad with Jim Grieshaber and also Jeff Scanina. And then I'll have my own post-game reaction show with our traditional Locked On Dolphins programming after that.